Hi, I'm Ginny Robertson, founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine and founder of the On Purpose Woman global community. I'm here with Kandi Leigh for a Writer in the Spotlight interview where I chat with the contributing writers for the current issue of On Purpose Woman magazine. Hey, Kandi, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm excited. I love being a part of this series.
I appreciate your series. I'm excited to talk to you about it even more. First, before we do that, tell our viewers a little bit about you.
I'm Kandi Leigh. I call myself the relationship coach with a twist. I work with couples and families to help them create healthier relationship dynamics. And so while traditional therapy might focus mostly on the mind and mindset, because I am a Reiki master teacher, I approach relationships from the alignment of spirit, mind, body, and emotions. And as an intuitive energy reader, I'm able to help people really make shifts, finding aspects of their relationships that they wouldn't even know were affecting them.
Mm-hmm. Well, is what makes you an expert on writing these articles. So you're writing a relationship soup series that you call a recipe for better relationships.
Yes.
And your article in the May-June issue is the third in the series, and it's called If It's Love, Can I Recognize It?
Mm-hmm.
But first, what inspired you to write this series? I don't know how many of them are going to be. Do you know yet?
6.
Okay.
6. And goodness, relationships have so much value to me because they are our greatest teachers. And that's what life is about, to have experiences and to grow and evolve and to really get to know who I am and who you are and how we can coexist together. And relationships are always mirroring back to us aspects of the relationship you have with yourself. And that's what helps you grow and evolve. And so I'm just very passionate about it. And I even just found as my, business evolves, it didn't matter what angle I tried to come at, we always end up addressing relationship dynamics and ultimately the relationship with self. So yeah, I'm very passionate about it.
When this article, you talk about how we first learn about love as a child, and we carry that idea of love into our adult relationships. And I guess it also affects our relationship with ourselves. Yes. But when we carry that into adult relationships, if we haven't really done work and know what's causing us to do things, it can lead to us sabotaging relationships that might be great for us. Yes. So talk about that.
Okay. Well, so
I have some experience on that myself, by the way.
I'm not even surprised because you and I have so much in common.
Yes.
So one of my favorite examples of this, it was just such a big aha, is when I was growing up, my mom just went through her childhood and her experiences, had a short temper and was quick to get angry, but she's also is extremely loving and is very quick to come and apologize. And that apology felt so good, right? And it was just that knowing that no matter what we went through, we would always work through it, no matter how bad it got. So what that programmed me to do without me realizing it was create arguments, subconsciously creating arguments so that we could get to the apology, because that would feel so good. And once I caught what I was doing, and it took me into my 40s to figure this out, I'm like, you know what? Thank you, teacher. I no longer need that experience to get to that feeling good part. And let's be real, my partner, he did not grow up in an environment like that. He grew up in a very toxic argument. I mean, I use that word. What's the word I'm looking for? I use that term. I don't like to use that term a lot. But his environment, he really had to be on the lookout for danger. And so he is not one to be quick to argue. That felt more threatening to him. So the fact that he was so patiently letting me learn this was loving.
Yes, because I was also thinking that you probably ran into a number of men along the way who didn't even want to put up with the arguing, right? So they would just like leave, take off, or get angry, or engage in a way that you're never going to learn the lesson, right?
Well, I would say it was more engaged in a way that I wasn't going to learn the lesson,
Mhm.
because they were definitely like, all right, let's
Oh,
argue this
okay.
out.
Okay, yeah. I just had a thought about myself, and I hadn't really thought about this reading the article, but in my family, I didn't feel like I had any power in my family. My sisters were older. They were gone by the time I was 3. And so I was an only child, so to speak. And I didn't feel like I had any power or didn't really have any autonomy at all. So when I broke out and, got married and I'm living with my first husband, then everything was an argument for me. I would just challenge everything. And he came up in a family where nobody ever raised their voice. It was and so he would just get in the car and leave. Would rarely ever. And that was so unsatisfying, but I didn't learn anything from that. I just got angrier and angrier until I did. And of course, the marriage ended. But, it was when I started doing some work on myself that I started to recognize that, oh, wow, isn't that interesting that I'm just trying to exert my power here.
Yeah,
And when it wasn't even needed, didn't even need to have power in that moment, if that makes sense.
it
So it's
makes
tricky.
perfect sense. Well, so here's where things can get contradictory, because in my previous marriage, there was an aspect of me that allowed, had not grown up being able to make choices.
Hmm.
And so for me, my comfort zone was not having to make a lot of choices. And so it actually was a long time before I let myself start creating arguments for other reasons, right? So
Hmm.
different like dynamics inside of us can take a front seat. And then when that gets into the back seat, something else will pop up.
Yes. That's why they've said, I think the first relationship I ever read talked about how there's always, at least 4 other people in the bed with you. If you have 2 parents at home, there's 6 of us in bed together, and we're bringing all this stuff and none of us know what we're doing.
Yes. Yes. Biggest misconception I had as a child was thinking my parents actually knew what they were doing.
Well, you talk in your book also about Gary Chapman's book that describes the love languages, and there's 5 of them. Can you talk about that and how, if we know our love language, it can shift how we, or maybe it can help us shift patterns, I guess.
Yes, I'm very passionate about the love languages. So in my previous marriage, how they served me was, my primary love language was touch, quality time, and the other ones are acts of service, gifts, words of affirmation. And touch and quality time were very valuable to me, right? Relationships are very valuable to me. Touch and quality time are very important aspects of that. So I was also, like I said, my mom and I would have these arguments, but we knew we loved each other. We said, I love you like a million times a day. Getting off the phone, we'd say it like 10 times. Right. So I married someone who grew up in a family that I love you was not really ever said. And so he did not say it very often. So it was very difficult for me. Like, does he actually love me? And so once I got exposed to the love languages and recognized, oh, acts of service is his primary love language. So when he's doing the dishes or changing my oil, that's his way of expressing, I love you. And so that was very helpful for a while. Right. But when I got onto this journey of having to really learn to love myself, that's when I started recognizing the power of using your love languages on yourself.
Mm.
So touch having been my primary, when I get out of the shower and I'm putting on my oils, I make sure to do it with as much love for myself as I can. I make sure to get quality time with myself. Whereas I used to, think alone and lonely were synonyms. Now I'm like, I need my time with me. I need to take myself on a date.
Mhm.
I nourish myself. And what I discovered is, as my journeys evolved, whereas gifts were my weakest love language, materialism just didn't mean much to me. I have found that when you start balancing things, they all come into balance and they all
Mhm.
serve a
Mhm.
purpose. They all speak. And so I practice them all on myself. I practice them with my partner. He practices them all with himself and with me. So, and actually, I'm just remembering that's where the article starts for this,
Yes.
for this article.
And so a love language, we're practicing it in the way that we treat the other person. We're using our love language, though, on them, and
Mm-hmm.
they're using their love language on us. So if they're
Typically.
really not in sync, or we don't recognize, like you said, service as a love language, it can feel empty. It can feel like they don't love me. And that's really important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. And that's where just being able to create awareness
Mhm.
is so important. But the fun part is the awareness is the hardest part to get to. Once you have the awareness, the rest can come really fast and
Yeah.
easily. Yeah.
Name those 5 love languages again.
Okay. Touch, quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, and gifts.
Okay.
I will tell you something very interesting. In general, I find that men's primary love language is words of affirmation.
Really? That is interesting.
And I would not say I have found something so consistent for women. And I think part of that is, and you kind of touched on this as we were chatting a little before we were on video, as we and women try to fit ourselves into corporate culture and different dynamics, and I talked about this in one of my earlier articles, we try to force ourselves into masculine energy.
Mhm.
And so I think that's where ours are a little broader, maybe.
Okay.
I haven't really figured out that connection, but
Yeah.
for men, words of affirmation and confidence is such a big part of masculine energy. That one is always there's such a strong connection there. So if you're a woman and you want to see a quick shift in your man, just help him feel confident,
Yeah.
praise his outfit choice or something authentic.
Yes. I've seen it in action. It really is true. But something else just came to me as you were talking. I'm thinking that this thing that makes it so easy for men to do that, to give the words of affirmation. I grew up in a culture that didn't let girls play sports. And boys learn very early to be on teams. And when you're on teams and you're doing well, you're all high five and you're all giving each other these words of praise. And in the corporate arena as well, when it's mostly men, you may be competitive, but you can be competitive and also be supportive. That's probably not the word they would use necessarily,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
women in my generation of women didn't learn how to do that necessarily. We didn't learn how to compete and lose, or to compete and win, or to compete and stay friends and go out and have a beer after. And so that would make sense to me that we didn't learn how to do girls with ourselves or with other
Mhm.
women. We
What's
had to learn that.
interesting?
Yeah.
What you just brought up even ties into, um, historical society and relationships. Each woman is individually competing to get that man who was going
Mm,
to help be her provider, right? And think about
yeah.
how that resonates historically. So for men, they weren't competing with each other to be providers. It's like each other's competing for that is
Right.
very different dynamic.
That is different. Men are kind of competing to maybe go spread their seed as many times as they can or something.
Right. They're like, everybody can have
Yes, exactly.
it.
Oh, it's such a great topic. And you and I, when we get together, we could talk for an hour before the chat, we could talk for 3 hours during the chat and an hour after the chat. But unfortunately, we don't like to make these too long because we want people to actually watch them.
Yes.
So knowing your love language can support you in shifting. And I can see has shown up in your life. And I really love what you said about using all five, because we do, all five make us feel good.
Mhm.
And so
Yes.
did you find as you started to use all five that the two primary ones were as big as they used to be, or did it actually feel more balanced?
I think in a lot of ways it feels more balanced, but then also it's interesting because they overlap, right? If
Mm,
I get an oil to put on myself to use touch, I've given myself a gift. I'm doing an act of service.
true.
Hopefully, I'm saying nice things to my body while I do it.
Great
And
point.
I'm spending the time with myself. So I start resonating with how everything I do really does encompass all of them. They're so much less fragmented.
And then the more I do that with myself and realize how good it feels, the more apt I am to do with someone I love.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
But and as our partners may have less awareness of it, it is again just so helpful to know their love language. And if
Mhm.
you choose to speak to them in their language.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. I mean, because I've often said, and this is not a manipulated thing, but I've often said that, I think in relationship with men, women hold all the cards for the most part, with healthy men. Let me just say with healthy men. We
Yes.
hold the cards because we can kind of set the mood, set the tone.
Mhm.
And you're right,
We
sometimes
can.
a simple thank you. And I used to think, why should I thank him for loading the dishwasher? It's not my job to load the dishwasher. But I realized some time back that when I would do something like housework, he would never say thank you to me. And one day I
Mhm.
said, isn't that interesting that I thank you, but you never thank me? And he goes, I never thought of it that way before. And the next thing I know, he's going, oh, you cleaned up the kitchen. It looks nice. And I wasn't saying it from this place of anger. It was just like, I thought it
No.
was more interesting that I was thanking him,
Yeah.
when it really wasn't my job and he did it for me. Or we don't have those jobs, we just do what needs to be done when it needs to be done. And so, gosh, just knowing that kind of stuff can save so much time and grief and energy and
Mhm.
sadness and hurt feelings and arguments and just all of that. So what is the name
Yes.
of the book? I don't Is it Your Five Love Languages? Is that the actual name of the
It's
book?
the five love languages. Yeah, by Gary
Okay,
Chapman.
Gary Chapman.
Yeah.
So check that
Mhm.
out if you want to know more
Yes.
about that. And also,
Yes.
Candy, how can our viewers find out more about your work?
They can go to candyleigh.com.
And
Um, yeah, which from there
okay.
links to everywhere.
And that link is also in the text of this video, y'all. So you can go over there and find out more about Candy and her work and decide if she might be a great fit for you. Anything coming up you want to share with us, or how about, or a final word of wisdom? How's that?
Oh, a final word of wisdom. Okay. I I guess it just wraps it all together of, you know, filling your own cup, filling your own love bucket. That's what the term the book
Mm,
uses, the love
mhm,
bucket. Making sure your love bucket is full and overflowing as much as possible, and then sharing love from that space,
mm.
speaking love from that space.
Ah, it's so easy when you do it that way, isn't it? It
Yeah.
feels really good. So
Yeah.
let me just say something too, since you are writing a series, that your article in the July-August issue, which will be out on July 1st, is called You Have to Believe in Love to See Love. So everyone be sure to check that out as well. And if you're not on my email list, just put something in the chat here and I can add you, or I can tell you how to get on it, because you have to be on my email list or you have to be on social media somewhere to find the magazine, or go to my website, opwgc.com, and click on magazine and you can read it there. And that is also in the chat here. So Candy, thank you for sharing your wisdom in writing, in words, and also here with us today. I really appreciate it, and your wisdom around relationships.
Thank you.
And I want to thank anyone who's watching this live or the replay on our YouTube channel. Again, to read Candy's current article, as well as the one coming out on July 1st, click on the magazine link in the text of this video. You can also go to our archives while you're there and read her first two articles. While you're there, also spend some time checking out the rest of the magazine for inspiration and resources for your mind, your body, your spirit, and your business. Again, thanks for watching.